Hi you guys, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Shani and I'm a homeschooling mom to 3 kids ages 13, 5, and 2. And today I'm going to be sharing with you everything that I'm going to be using for my 13-year-old for the upcoming 2022-2023 school year. Now, for him, we are doing a sort of hybrid 8th, 9th grade year. And as you can see here, I have built quite a stack for quite a year of school. Now, I really heavily debated on how to present this material to you guys because I get that this is a lot to just show you all of the books with no real rhyme or reason or logic to how I'm going to use them. But ultimately what I decided to do, because it was between showing you, each stack going by subject and each stack going by how I'll actually put them in order by term. And ultimately I decided to go with showing you each subject stack in one, just because it seemed to me to make more organizational sense if you're planning your own upcoming school year or if you're trying to look ahead for your kids when they get older. It made more sense to me to sort them by subject, but if you would like to see how I'll actually be dividing it up between the terms, this year I'm going to be doing a 3-term school year with 4 months per term. So if that's something that you want to see how I'll actually put all of this together to make a full school year, then let me know in the comments below and I'd be happy to make that video. It just seemed to make the most sense to show it to you in the order that I'm going to present it. So this year, I went with the overall theme of logic, reason, and math. So this is heavily inspired by the Build Your Library Level 8 History of Science curriculum. I am not following that curriculum, however, I did use that curriculum as an inspiration for this year's curriculum that I have written for my son. He's turning 13 at the beginning of the year, so we're firmly in that logic stage of development, and so we're really going to be delving into the history of science, the history of mathematics, the logistics of science and mathematics and logic, and that sort of side of things. So you'll see that as we get into it. But there are still a few things left of middle school that I would like to cover, and I think that you'll be able to see as I go through this which things will be more on the high school level and which things are still sitting in that intermediate middle grade level. So to get started here, I'm just going to show you these two. We did sex ed this past 2021-2022 school year with him, which went through really great. But I saw this book and I thought it would be great. This will actually be a family subject, but it's the way that this book is structured. It's called Welcome to Consent, and it's a whole curriculum book, whatever, based solely around consent. It's called Welcome to Consent, How to Say No, When to Say Yes, and Everything in Between. And I thought this was an important book to go over with my children. But it's set up to where half of the book is good for, all ages, just to talk about consent and when things are okay and when they're not okay, and they don't get too, into like adultness, just, general knowledge. And so I'll be going over that with both of my sons. But about halfway through the book, it ventures into an older subject matter and, specifically about, navigating, see, stuff like that. And so half of this book will be solely for my 13-year-old. But yeah, this is a course in consent, which I thought was really interesting. And so we'll be going through that as a family. The only thing that I want to point out is that I am American, and this book, I didn't realize until after I bought it, is written for an Australian audience. So there's resources in here that are specific to Australia that aren't good here in America. So like it doesn't say call 911. It has other resources listed. So if you're in America, just be aware of that. But yeah, so far that I've seen, I really like what I'm reading, and these types of books are always good for a good conversation with my son. So we'll be going through that. The next thing that I'm going to show you is, so 8th grade here in Georgia, Normally you would go through what's called Georgia Studies, which is you study your state. This will be a family subject because my 5-year-old, I also got a textbook for him, which I'll show you when I get to those videos. But we'll be going through that as a family. But the 8th grade Georgia Studies textbook is actually available. The digital textbook is available online for free from Georgia Public Broadcasting. So he'll be going through that digital textbook when we do Georgia Studies. But I did find this book and I thought it was really cool. It's sort of a graphic-ish, it's got like these graphic photos and it's just different. Georgia has a lot of like ghost story type lore to it. And my son really likes, horror. So, like, we live not too far. He's visited Tybee Island before. So, like, the Tybee Island, like, nuclear bomb. It's just a bunch of ghost stories and mysterious stories. Jimmy Carter's UFO sighting. I just thought it would be a cool addition, and I thought that he would enjoy it. So, this will be a reader to go along with his Georgia Studies. So, there's that. Okay, now, getting into the meat. I'm going to start with math, just because I think it's probably going to look like the most, either math or history. I'm not sure which one will intimidate you guys more, but so for math, we're actually going to be using a few different things. So I got this Everything You Need to Know to Ace Math in One Big Fat Notebook. We'll work our way through this entire curriculum here, and it's written very much like, I think it's, notes borrowed from the smartest kids in class, double checked by an award-winning teacher. So it's written as if it's a kid taking notes, and then at the end they'll have these check your knowledge sections, and then check your answers will be on the back. So, this goes through essentially everything that you would need to know from 6th to 8th grade. And my son has used these notebooks before, and he really likes the format. So, yeah, I really, really like this series. The next thing that I have here is the math book. From Pythagoras to the 57th dimension, 250 milestones in the history of mathematics. So I guess this would probably go more along with history, but the way that this is formatted is each page, and there's a lot of pages, so forgive me, but each page will have a blurb about something that happened in the history of math, and it goes in chronological order. So this is 1 million BC, cicada generated prime numbers, and then as you go through, there will be these really beautiful, it's kind of like the Welcome to the Museum books, where it's sort of like each page is some type of exhibit, and you just move your way through history through the lens of mathematics. And as you can see here, it's got the year on the edge of each page, and it'll have these photos and then like a short story. So I really thought this book was super cool. And I think that learning the history behind mathematics and how we came to understand what we do about math really helps math come to life and not be such a intimidating subject. So, yep. And it goes all the way up to, let's see here, what's the last year this has?
I love you, Mom.
I love you too. It goes all the way up to 2007. So.
Are you done with your video?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry about that. So, that is the math book. Up next, I have the Big Fat Middle School Notebook Workbook. This follows along the same path as this does. It just gives sort of an extra lesson to go over. You see it's much shorter. It's just sort of a recap of what that lesson was. And it's going to follow along exactly. So Unit 1, Chapter 9 is going to be the same in this book as it is in the other book. And then it gives you extra practice to go through. So again, it's got this recap and then extra practice, because I am using this as more of a main guide. I thought it was good to get this extra workbook. So I'm going to be using these, and I'm going to skip over this really quickly, some of this, to show you these spectrum workbooks, because I realized I piecemealed all of this together. I got all of this at separate times, but these two and these two follow almost the exact same scope and sequence. So as far as the purpose of the chapters, so like Unit 3 is the number system, and ratios, portions and percents, equations and expressions. This order is the exact same for these books as it is for these books. So these will be obviously paired together. But this is the Spectrum Critical Thinking for Math. It's listed as grade 7. I don't really get hung up on the grade levels because I feel like middle grade math is middle grade math. At least not where I live, as far as I can see from the Common Core sort of requirements. There isn't much variation between 7th and 8th grade math, especially with some of the other things that I'm adding in here. So I'm not too concerned about it, but I really liked this workbook. I thought it was good. It's especially good to add in with that everything you need to know. And so the way that this works is there's a review. You go through the lessons, which is this gray area up top. There's a short lesson. There's practice problems, and then sort of a check what you know pre-test. And then at the end of every so many chapters, you'll get, like, here's a mid-test, and these will actually work for me to do my record keeping and test keeping. So that's mostly what I got this for, is to actually have the tests in order to, make sure that I'm keeping up with those things with this higher level that my 13-year-old is at. So that is Spectrum Critical Thinking for Math, and then Spectrum just regular math. These both go over, as you can see from the bottom here, they both go over positive and negative integers, ratios and proportions, algebraic equations and inequalities, geometric problem solving, probability, statistics, and then they both have an answer key at the back. And so this goes over the same thing. I will say that this appears to be a bit more difficult than that first one, or at least as far as like my son is concerned. I think this will be a bit more of a challenge for him, especially once we get into the back here. But it's structured exactly the same way with the pre-tests and the end of unit mid-tests here. And let me see if I can find. Sorry. So, okay, so here's a mid-test for this version for chapters 1 through 4. So you guys can compare those if you would like. But this will, this will help me with midterms and finals and things like that for record keeping purposes for myself. So we have that. And then I also have this grade 6 to 8 word problems from Kuman. This will be a lot of review. You can see I've already torn some of the pages out because I'm setting up for, I've already set up the folders, which I showed you guys last week. But these are just word problems. It's very applicable math. As you can see with the speed, it's just questions involving speed that work with fractions a bit. We've got linear equations. It's just very applicable word problem math. It also comes with reviews and answer key at the end. I just thought that this was a good thing to add in because for the beginning of the school year, we're going to be using this Life of Fred, and it does come with a bridge, but I still wanted some paper workbook work for him. So, skipping back over here, my son went through the first 2 books of the intermediate series last year, so I'm going to have him finish that up. This should only take him maybe a week or 2 to get through, but this is the Mineshaft book from the Life of Fred series, and this is just sort of follows a goofy character named Fred, and it's kind of a spiral approach to math, living book approach to math, where they read, and then at the end, very similar to that Big Fat Notebook, it's your turn to play, and then they check their answers. So he'll be finishing that, and then he will move on to fractions, as serious as it needs to be, and decimals and percent, as serious as it needs to be. Both of these books completely focus on those topics, and these are the next progression in the Life of Fred series. So he will be going through these first to just I really want him to have a solid foundation in fractions, decimals, and percents, because from there, all the rest of math is formed. So, and even here, look, it's got a little diploma. I like that. But it's got these bridges in here, which kind of serve as tests. But most everything here is audible. So you're reading it aloud. You're giving the tests aloud, or if they're reading it to themselves, they're reading it to themselves. And yeah, so that's everything with that. Those are the two things that he's going to be using there. And the last two things that I'm using for math are this YPi DK book. And this, I don't know that we'll go all the way through, but this adds in that historical context. So why bother measuring anything? Moons and months. This will go really great with like the first chapter of our history. Measuring land. I just thought this is a really great addition. As you guys start to see the theme of this year come together, this really goes along with, just sort of bringing these topics to life, science and math, why learn it, and how we came to understand the things that we do about mathematics and the universe around us. So I thought that this is a really great addition. And following along the same lines is this DK, What's the Point of Math? How to track time, win a game show, become a trillionaire, how to get impressed with a guess, how to predict a comet. And this is pretty similar to the YPi, except this actually comes along with like your turn type experiments. I'll see if I can find one here. This goes over different, here it is. So this goes over different number systems, and it says try it out, how to write your birthday, and it tells you, how to write your birthday in hieroglyphics and Roman numerals. So this is an actual math book, and if you have a younger child, this would work. I think it's its own curriculum, especially if you're doing like an ancient history unit. This would work out really well. I really, really love these DK books. How to use symmetry, how to measure your field. This is really practical math. And how to tell the time, different types of calendars, and sort of the history. It's going through a timeline here. Use coordinates on a plane, patterns and sequences. Just a really great resource. I really love these books. So that is most everything we are using for math for him. So that's math. Got one subject down. Congratulations to us. Moving on. We're going to go to logic next. So one of his electives this year is going to be logic. And I have quite a few things here that I'm using for it. This is one of the smaller stacks, but this is kind of a bigger caseload. So the first thing that I have is this Introducing Logic graphic guide. Here is, it's pretty small. I don't know if you can tell by the size of my hand. I thought it was actually going to be bigger when I was looking at it online. But this is more like formal logic introductions. There's not a lot about fallacies or anything in here. I think they briefly touch on it, but this is more of like a layman's introduction to formal logic. And see, it's going over like Euclid, truth conditions. Yeah, so as you can see, it's just sort of like a pocket guide to introductory logic, and I thought that this would be a good addition because I haven't done very much formal logic with him. A lot of it's been like informal fallacies. So insufficient evidence. Yep. So I thought it was cute, so he'll be going through that. The next book that I have is this Logical Fallacy Monsters, an illustrated collection of logical fallacies by Bleak. I think that's how you say that, Bleak. I really, really like this book. It does a really good job of walking through all of the different types of fallacies, and as you'll see these puzzle pieces here, it does a good job of bringing them all together. So each fallacy has its illustration that goes with it that I thought was really cute, and you'll see non sequitur is a sub-fallacy of formal fallacy. So it will go through and keep adding these puzzle pieces down here so that you can keep kind of connecting, especially if you're notebooking. That would be a great way to kind of keep up with everything. I love these illustrations. I think my favorite one here, like the red herring, the straw man monster. I don't know if I'll see him, but the straw man monster, I thought it was the coolest thing. Here it is, the straw man. Look at that, you guys. That's so cool. So yeah, so each one has a monster, kind of personifying the fallacy, and then it's got, you know, a brief overview, and then it keeps you connected with how it relates to logic as a broader topic. Yep, so that's that. I really like that. Next, I've shown you guys this before, and we did go through a lot of this last year, but it kind of fell by the wayside. We ended up getting focused on other things because he picked up French kind of mid-year, so logic fell by the wayside, but he was learning French, so but we're going to go through both of these, and these two are companion curriculums. They say that they could go for either a half a credit or a full credit of logic. I felt like one would be a full credit each, probably, but we'll see by the time we get through it how I feel about, you know, if it qualifies for 1 credit together. Probably it will be 1 credit together, but we'll see how I feel. So this is the thinking toolbox, which goes over a little bit different things than the fallacy detective. The fallacy detective goes over everything that we were just talking about with the informal fallacy monsters. We're going over things like red herrings, ad hominems, failure or faulty appeal to authority, appeal to the people, slippery slope, part to whole, hold apart, generalizations, weak analogies, propaganda, appeal to fear, bandwagon, etc. Right? So these are all fallacies. And I can give you a brief overview. It's just you read through, you know, one of the lessons, and then you know, orally kind of debate these scenarios and arguments that they give you at the end. And then the thinking toolbox goes over a bit of different things. This is more about how to think about things that are, this is your reasoning skills. So 35 lessons that will build your reasoning skills. And just to show you, this goes over when it's done to argue, fact, inference, and opinion, finding the premise and the conclusions, how to list reasons why you believe something, how to defeat your own argument, when not to use logic, using opposing viewpoints. Opposing viewpoints are everywhere, the good, the bad, and the ugly evidence. You can't believe everything you hear. Are you primary or secondary? Who has a reason to lie? Corroborating evidence. Mystery of the stolen minute. Does a possibility make a possibly make a probably? Circumstantial evidence. Puzzling developments. Tools that help scientists do their jobs. Brainstorming. Hypothesis is a huge word. How to prove you're wrong, a good experiment, how to analyze data, listen and learn, pseudoscience, and some projects. So that is this book. It's set up exactly the same way as the Fallacy Detective. It's got these little cartoons. You read over the lesson, and then you do the exercise at the end. So that's that. And then I have these 2 illustrated books to go along with it. An illustrated book of loaded language and an illustrated book of bad arguments. Again, these are 2 that pair really well with everything else that we're doing. But they just have an illustration. They have this kind of map of logical fallacies here, and an illustration, and then a description of a fallacy. So, you know, a really good reader to go through all the different fallacies there. And then loaded language, this is a new one that I have. So, but this is, pretty similar to the other one. It goes through different types of language vagueness, allegedly. Much looks less pictures on this one, as you can see, but still. Rabbit trails, language that presupposes, so, really going through how to analyze what you're being told and think about what you're being told and how to kind of weed out bad arguments and bad ideas from good ones. So how to think. A whole course on how to think. Okay, now that we've got that out of the way, try to move it along here. This video is going to be so long. We are going to move on to his other elective, which is going to be geography. So I have a few things to go along with geography. The first thing that I have here is longitude, which is, where did it go? Oh, I thought I had a subtitle. It's just called Longitude, but it's a true story about how, about solving, what was at the time one of the greatest problems for science. And it's the story of how longitude came to be. How did we decide on that method? So I think there's not really any pictures in here. It's just a novel, but that's going to go along with this geography book. Here I have Outdoor Geography by Herbert. Again, there's not really very many photos in here. This is just kind of a very common Charlotte Mason style living book as far, for geography. And this is more of like the rudiments of geography and seeing longitude, the planets, observing the stars. There you go. So we've got that. Because we're going to be kind of taking a detour off into the sea with longitude, he's read these books before, but I threw them in here because my oldest is obsessed with the Titanic. So I have What Was the Titanic from the Who Was series, and again, you can tell he's read this book before, but he doesn't mind rereading books about things that he likes. And then I have this graphic library, The Sinking of the Titanic, just to kind of have a, something that he'll be into in there. I also have this Spectrum World Geography Grade 6. Again, I'm not worried about the Grade 6 thing. I just have this as sort of an add-on to pretty much to pad the workload out to make it a full course. This goes over map skills, a lot of map skills, a little bit about culture. It's very like the story of Islam, so it's kind of well-rounded. It's got a good, the people part of geography, as well as, the maps and, physical land part of geography. So I thought that was really cool. I thought it was a good way to kind of really round out the course. And as you can see back here, it comes with maps. So we've got that. Next I have Sea Clocks, The Story of Longitude. So this is kind of like a picture book. He could probably read this in an afternoon, but I thought it was a cool inclusion. And it's one that my younger son could probably pick up and read as well. So we've got that. This book is a little thicker. This is called The Untold Story of Getting from Here to There, Time and Navigation. So this is, time and place, navigating at sea, navigating in the air, navigating in space, inventing satellite navigation, navigation for everyone, and where are we headed are the title of these chapters. So I thought that this is really cool. I thought that this is a really good angle to look at geography from because, what really is geography but us orienting ourselves within the world, both culturally and, physically. I just thought that this is a really cool text to follow. So this will probably be one of my main texts as far as mapping out the course. this and the next book that I'll show you. But I really thought that this is a cool resource. So if you were doing any kind of unit on sea travel or navigation, geography, this is a really great thing to add in. And the last thing that I have here is this Usborne Geography Encyclopedia with a Complete World Atlas. My 13-year-old really loves these Usborne encyclopedias, and I love them too. It does a great job of going through the seasons, protecting the soil, living with volcanoes, windstorms. It goes through all that. It goes through ecosystems, tropical grasslands, mountains, towns and cities, manufacturing services. So this along with the time and navigation will be our two main courses, and then this actually goes through the different people on the different continents and different countries. So yeah, there you go. That is everything we're using for geography. If you guys hear any weird noises, I promise the kids are okay. Okay, moving along. Next we have science. So, we've got a few readers. The first one I have here is Richard Dawkins, The Magic of Reality, How We Know It's Really True. As you can see, I'm actually halfway through this book right now. If you're an adult and you're looking for things to read for yourself, this one was a little disappointing for me because so far there's nothing in this book that I didn't know already. But I could imagine maybe if you grew up like super fundamentalist or something that there would be some, mind-boggling facts in here. Or if you're a 13-year-old being introduced to a lot of science concepts, this would be really cool. But I thought this was a good addition. He just goes through, I'll show you here. It's 12 questions about the world. What's reality and what's magic? Who is the first person? Why are there so many different kinds of animals? What are things made of? Why do we have night, day, winter, and summer? What is the sun? What is a rainbow? When and how did everything begin? Are we alone? What is an earthquake? Why do bad things happen? What is a miracle? And he starts each chapter with a myth or multiple myths that humans have come up with to answer those questions, and then he gives the scientific answer, or the current scientific answer to each question. So I thought that was a good addition. Next, I have another Everything You Need to Know to Ace Big Fat Notebook. This one's for science. Again, it's set up the same way. We'll go through each of the lessons here, and then at the end of the lesson, wherever it may be, we'll go through the questions. And there's a check your knowledge and check your answers. So we'll be going through this. This is a pretty comprehensive overview of basic science for the middle grades. So we have that. Next, I have the Storybook of Science by Jean-Henri Favre. This is a big book, and I don't know if we're going to make it all the way through this book or not. But I really wanted to include books written by scientists, and this was one of those books that I've had sort of in my wish list. I may use this as a read aloud, just as I'm, going through different things. But yeah, this is kind of another classic Charlotte Mason style book, and we'll see if we make it through this or not. But I really wanted to include at least part of this because, I think it's a really cool historical book to read. Next, I have Astrophysics for Young People in a Hurry by Neil deGrasse Tyson. I have read this book already. I absolutely love it. This is a beautiful book. It's glossy. It's attractive. I think that it's really approachable for anyone to read. I think even if you've read this aloud to a younger child, it'd still be a really approachable way to learn about astrophysics, which is a really intimidating topic, at least for me. But yeah, this is a great book. I highly recommend this to anybody, regardless of your scientific understanding. This book is awesome. So highly, highly recommend that book. Next, I have 3 books from the graphic library. thing. These are not necessarily written to a middle or high school level, but my son likes graphic novels, so I always try to include a little bit of more fun reading. So this is investigating. All of these are this Max Axiom Super Scientist series, but this is investigating the scientific method, and it's just a graphic novel, you know, going through all the different steps of the scientific method. Yeah, I just thought it was cute and a good thing to add. There's some more information at the back and a glossary. So I've got the scientific method, I've got chemical reactions, and I've got states of matter. Next, I have the Illustrated Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking, and I included this, I think, for obvious reasons. Now, a lot of these books that you're going to see I bought used, so this is an old library copy. You might see some writing or something inside of them. It's just because I bought them. I thrifted most of the books that you see here, so this is another absolutely gorgeous book, written by a scientist. And it's just another really approachable way. I would say this is less approachable than Neil deGrasse Tyson, but all the same, it's sort of really big concepts in science broken down for the layman, which I thought was a nice thing to do. So there's that. Next, I have the kids' book of elements, an awesome introduction to every known atom in the universe. This book I thought was really cool. It comes with this really awesome looking periodic table, and each page has each element and everything you kind of need to know about the element. Really, really broken down. There's a book I'll show you in a minute that goes through the history of the periodic table, and I just thought that this would be a good thing to add on, so as he's reading about each one, he can open up the book, flip to that element. And then in the back of this, as you can see here, I'm probably not going to pull these out, but these are actually flashcards that come with the book. So you can pull these all out and use them to sort of memorize them, or their atomic number if you needed to. I'm not going to go that far with it, but I did think it was cool. So got that. Again, I have the Spectrum Science Grade 7. This goes through the introduction to scientific research, natural earth life and applied science lessons, research extension activities, and keyword definitions. And so this, again, it kind of has the same structure as the rest of the Spectrum stuff. There's going to be a page that he reads and then some comprehension. This is doubling for me as like reading comprehension as well as science, and it also comes with the test. So I have that for my record keeping purposes, and I can use them as midterms and finals. So, yeah. But this would work absolutely as a standalone curriculum. I'm just extra, and I'm, you know, I am the way that I am, so I have to keep adding on things. So, but I have that. And the last thing that I'm using is another one of these Usborne encyclopedias. This one's a science encyclopedia. No! Sorry. And this, again, is a really beautiful book. I'm not sure if you can see that from there, but just another really beautiful book that really breaks down all of these big ideas into bite-sized, digestible pieces, especially when you're going through as much as he's going through. I think it's good to keep these types of resources around, and then you can use them for years to come. Like, no matter what you're studying, there's something you can pull this out for, and it will have something in it for you. So yeah, that is science, or at least applicable science. We're working our way through here. Okay, so next we have history. This is a big stack, so gear up. So first, actually, we're going to do, he's read this one before as well, but I pulled it out because why not? Who was Isaac Newton? That's another Who Was book. He reads these in like an afternoon, so it's not much to pull one out, and if he wants to go through it again, he can, just to refresh himself. But Who Was Isaac Newton? These are two books by Sam Keene, The Disappearing Spoon and Other True Tales of Madness, Love, and the History of the World from the Periodic Table of Elements. And then this one is The Violinist's Thumb and Other Lost Tales of Love, War, and Genius, as written by our genetic code. I have not read this one yet. I have read this one. I love this book. It basically walks through every step of creating the periodic table and how we discovered the elements, all the drama around it. There's not really any. There was one picture that I thought was cool that was like the original periodic table. Here it is, what the original periodic table looked like, but there's not very many like illustrations or anything. It's mostly a book, but I really, really love this book. I highly recommend this to anyone, adult, kid, whatever. And so I'm assuming that this book will be equally as cool. This is world history from the perspective of the periodic table, and this is world history from genetics. So genetics and the periodic table. Highly recommend this author. I think it's awesome. Next, I have 5 equations that change the world. The power and poetry of mathematics. This kind of follows in the same vein as these books, where it's different math equations, how they affected the world. Again, there's not really any illustrations in here, but the writing is awesome. And so, yeah. So history from specific mathematics, or math equations. So we have that. Our main, this is the only super textbooky thing that I have. We're going through The Story of Science by Joy Hakim. I'm not sure, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. But the first book is Aristotle Leads the Way. Oops, out of order. Newton at the Center is the second book, and Einstein Adds a New Dimension is the third book. So these are history from the perspective of science. And this is like the text. So this is the textbook that we'll be working our way through, and everything else is kind of centered around the progression of this. But yeah, so yeah, this is literally the history of science, and I'll be pairing this as well with the crash course history of science to go through. I can show you these as well, but it's pretty standard textbook type stuff. It's written in a very readable way, so you know it's not boring. It's not a boring textbook, but it is a textbook. So, yep. So we'll be going through those. Next, I have more graphic library. These 3 are specific scientists that I wanted to do kind of a brief focus on. So I have Jonas, Salk, and the polio vaccine. And, you know, it's just kind of the graphic library, graphic rendition of the life of the polio, the guy who invented the polio vaccine and, you know, the process he went through to get that. Lewis Pasteur and pasteurization. Again, just a quick, you know, probably 20-minute read for my son. Not even. Super fast. And Marie Curie and radioactivity. So yeah, we have that. Next, I have Euclid, the man who invented geometry. And this is, again, not really written for like the high school level, but it's a very goofy, funny book, and it's got some math concepts in it. And I thought it would just be a cool thing to add in as we're learning about the history of math and the history of science, because they kind of go together. So I have that. Next, I have Bomb, the Race to Build and Steal the World's Most Dangerous Weapon. And so this is written in a very like World War II-y feel. I don't think there's very many illustrations in this one either, but it's literally the story of the atom bomb and, you know, all the drama that happened around it leading up to, yeah, so it's got some pictures in the back, you know, the Manhattan Project and everything to do with that, so I've got that. Next, I have Sugar Changed the World, a story of magic, spice, slavery, freedom, and science. And this is like history of the world from the perspective of sugar, because sugar, you know, leads to people doing terrible things for the most part, because we crave it, like, as people. So this one is definitely not, I wouldn't say that this would be for younger kids, but I thought it was a cool perspective on world history, and like cool to highlight like this weird angle to come at history. So This one is full of photos and illustrations and exhibits. Oh, there's a timeline there, so I have that. Next, I have Newton's Rainbow, The Revolutionary Discoveries of a Young Scientist. This one is just sort of like a picture book, but it's pretty dense for a picture book. I just thought it would be a cool way to, you know, expand on Newton a little bit. It's, you know, a more attractive way, I guess, to read. I still wanted to include some picture books and some, you know, more alive ways to read to kind of break up all of the text that he'll be going through this year. And going on that same line, I have The Librarian Who Measured the Earth. This is about Eratosthenes. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Eratosthenes, I'm pretty sure is the way that you pronounce that. But this is about him and all of the things that he discovered. Oh, you know, I just realized I'm missing a book. I also bought a book about Hypatia. But it is upstairs in my younger son's room because I read it aloud to him as a bedtime story. But I did also buy a quick like chapter book type of read for about Hypatia. So if I remember in another video, I'll pull it out, or you know, if you guys want to know what it is, let me know and I'll try to find it and link it for you. But that's The Librarian Who Measured the Earth. Here's another quick picture book about Pythagoras and the ratios. This just goes through a little bit of simple math and Pythagoras because we will be learning about his math cult this year. So I thought that, you know, I pulled this out from last year. I thought it'd be good to go over again. Next, I have Dinosaur Lady, The Daring Discoveries of Mary Anning, the First Paleontologist. This is just another scientist study. I have quite a few picture books that are just like specific scientists and mathematicians. But this goes along with that series. It's like Dinosaur Lady, Shark Lady. It's just women and science, pretty much. But I really like the pictures. We've read this book before when we were doing prehistory. So I thought it would be cool to pull it back out and just kind of have a refresher on Mary Anning and her contribution to paleontology. So I have that. And I also have Barnum's Bones, How Barnum Brown Discovered the Most Famous Dinosaur of the World. Again, another scientist spotlight. And another book that we've read before, but I pulled it out again just to, you know, read it again because it's cool. So I've got that. This, I have The Story of Maria Merian. This is from the Good and the Beautiful library and another scientist spotlight. I really love the illustrations in their books. I think that they're beautiful. And it's just another picture book to kind of go over again because it's been a while since we read this book, so another scientist spotlight. I have The Boy Who Loved Bugs, the story of Jean-Henri Fabry. I showed you guys the book that he wrote earlier. This is a picture book about his life, so another scientist spotlight. There's a picture of him in the back. And again, beautiful watercolor illustrations. On a pretty dense picture book as far as picture books go, but it is a biography, so I have that. And then here, I'll be doing a different video about our time mini unit, but I did include these in here because we will be going through them, and these are just about the history of time. This one's called About Time, a first look at time and clocks, and it kind of goes along with that time and navigation books that we have too, lunar months. This would be great to add to like any like ancient history unit that you're doing. But this is kind of a quick read picture book version of that. And then this is a bit thicker. This is The Story of Clocks and Calendars by Betsy Meister, I'm not sure. And this one is a bit more colorful and a bit more dense, but it also goes through different types of calendars from the beginning of history until now. And we've read some of this before. We'll read over it again. But yeah, so that is that big pile of history books. Okay. One last... It's stuck. Okay, one last topic, and then we are done. Okay, so last thing that we have here is language arts, literature, that section. So the first, I have quite a few like novels here that he's going to be reading. The first one I have is A Parcel of Patterns. This is the true story of a town called Iam, I think is how you pronounce it. When the Black Plague came in medieval times, there's no... this book I actually got for like $1, and that's because it's misprinted a little bit. So if you look at the way that it's printed on the page, it's like, I don't know if you can see, it's like crooked. So it's a little difficult to read. I was like, oh, that's why it was $1. But it'll still work. But this is a novel basically about the Black Plague coming to this town and how they deal with it, you know, spiritually, emotionally, all that stuff. So it's probably a super quick read, but I have that. Next, I have 2 books by George R.R. Martin. Now, George R.R. Martin is included in here specifically because, 1, he is my personal favorite sci-fi writer, and I wanted to include sci-fi in this year, and 2, because these are these 2, and then 1 more that I could not find a physical copy of, but I did end up finding an audiobook for that we're going to listen to, that is called The Way Across the Dragon. But these 2 books, Tough Voyaging and Sand Kings, both deal with people getting the power of God and how they use the power of God and kind of who gets power, why they get power, who deserves power, those questions. So he's going to be reading Sand Kings and Tough Voyaging, and these are probably the only George R.R. Martin books, along with The Way Across the Dragon, that are age appropriate for his age too, so be careful with George R.R. Martin. Some of his writing gets wild. Next, he'll be reading Fahrenheit 451. I don't think I need to give that book an introduction. The next book I have is The True Adventures of Charlie Darwin, a novel. This is obviously about Charles Darwin and his legendary journey to make his discoveries. It's fictionalized, but it's based, you know, on Charles Darwin and his adventures around the world. Next, he's going to be reading Ender's Game, another book that I don't think needs an introduction. It's a very famous sci-fi book. And the last book is The Sand Reckoner. This book is about Archimedes. I wanted to make sure I had that right. And so it's a novel, but it's about Archimedes. So that's the other novel that he's going to be reading. Last 3 things here. I have A Sentence a Day. I used this last year. They're short, playful, proofreading exercises to help students avoid tripping up on their write. And this is just, you know, you write a sentence on the board and it's incorrect, and then they have to edit it. And so this will be our daily editing for that year. All the sentences are pretty silly. Like this one is, I ain't gonna be no candy cane and no school play. So, like, all the sentences are silly. So we'll be going through that. Next is Wordly Wise, Book 6. He'll be working through this. I used this last year. This is just a vocabulary program that includes a little bit of reading comprehension at the end. And usually the reading comprehension is like some type of historical blurb. So I really like this program. He actually specifically asked, he said that he enjoyed this last year, and so he wanted to do it again. So we're going to be moving on to Book 6. And the last thing that I have here for him is this reading journal that I got from Schoolnest. The only thing that I'll say, I don't know if you can see, these covers smear so bad. This came from the delivery driver or whoever packaged it. Like, it came with these fingerprints on it. I was pretty upset. But I really thought that this is cool. It comes with this book index, so he can write the books in here. He's got reading goals here. His finished book stack. A wish list. Library books. A yearly reading tracker. 100 book trackers, so you can check them off as he reads. Book bingo. And then the rest of it looks like this. So he's got a book review where he can write the title of the book, the author, the date he read it, give it a 5-star rating, a summary, his thoughts about the book, questions, his favorite quotes, and an illustration or a narration. So in lieu of having him write a paper for every book, because there are so many books this year, I'm going to have him fill these out for all the books that he reads. And I thought that that would be a better alternative. So, not to keep you guys any longer, that is everything that I am using for this school year for my 13-year-old 8/9th grader. If you have any questions about anything that I'm doing, you want to know more, you want to know how I'm going to be using it, let me know in the comments down below. Subscribe if you want to see more about how I'm, working through navigating these older years of homeschool. And yeah, I'll see you guys later.